All right, so far, this is what I've got. I've got a sketch layer. And on top of that sketch layer, which does not count as one of my compositing reference layers because my sketch is not going to be in the final, I have a background layer. I have a little mountain mirror background layer, which is a totally different color, but I'll show you how I can make that match. I've got middle ground, really cool, spiky, snowy mountains, which give everything a lot of height. And then I've got these like closer mid-ground, big stones coming out of lush greenery. And then on top of that, I've got this little city atop a stone, and I'm already thinking, with that one, which is from Myanmar, I'm going to Option Command T, and I'm just going to flip it horizontally and see if I like that shape. And maybe I'll right-click and I'll distort it, and I'll just tip this down a little. Maybe tip this up. This is how, even with man-made things, you can play with the perspective. So it kind of matches the scene. Because this was a photograph probably taken from a helicopter. Helicopters can be at odd angles. So I'm trying to make it fit a little bit better. I can even play with, this is a little extreme, the perspective tool and try to stretch it by like pinching it in at the sides, like that. So it stays wide at the base. Because I want it to seem exotic and strange. So maybe something around that. Right. And maybe I want to narrow it a little bit. So I'll hold down Shift and kind of narrow it. Okay, the next one I have, this. And I'm going to move it. I'm going to line it up with my sketch. Yeah, that works pretty well. Okay, what's in front of that? I've got this rocky mountain. That might be a really good near foreground element. But I need to cut it out, right? So I use my lasso. And I'm just going to do a rough cut. Again, not overlapping the clean edge I'll later cut to, but just kind of rough cut around it, and then hit Command J, and then delete the smart object it came from. Then I've got this other layer. I've got a few too many layers, honestly. So I have to make some selections. Now this was going to be my Mount Olympus. This is a cliffside monastery. And so for it to be my Mount Olympus, I have to drastically shrink this, which sometimes is necessary. And shrinking isn't a problem. Growing something beyond its native resolution is a problem. So if you find that you bring a file in and then you have to really grow it, that means the computer is having to make up pixels and it's going to make it blurrier, which isn't such a big issue if it's in the far background. But if it's in your foreground or middle ground, that can really change the quality. But you can always shrink it because computers are very good at taking away information. So I wanted to make this kind of this, cliff or hillside, mountainside city just like that. And so that's about the right size, but I need to cut it out. So I'm just going to roughly cut around it. And because it looks just like kind of regular apartments, after I cut it out, I might transform it a little bit. So just in little ways, I'll play with distort, and I'll kind of tip it up and shrink it in and make it look a little bit more dramatic. All right. Now, because that's in the background, right, I don't want it to be my topmost layer. I can then sink this down until it's actually behind this one. And now I've got all my most of my layers. Let's see, there's one more that I thought I might use, which were these foreground rocks. And if I am going to use it, this is how I would use them. I'm going to avoid these people completely, and I'm just going to take my lasso and roughly cut around the rocks. Rocks are great because they're hard-edged, so they're easy to select and clean around, but I'm going to get rid of these people. And then grab all of that in the corner, duplicate it, get rid of the smart object by deleting it, and then move this into place, bless you, and transform it. Never a problem to shrink it down, and put this into the immediate foreground. But I might want to flip it so it comes in on the other side. And I might want to lower it a little bit. Just depends how dramatically tall I want to make this thing. So hold down Shift and stretch it. All right, now this is what has happened. These are my references. This is kind of stacked up, and you can see the guides I put down, which was my original sketch. And it's communicating what I thought, but based on my references, especially this one, Option Command T, nope, not that one, this one, Option Command T, which is such a strong reference, I can make it bigger, and it just works. And the one behind it, this one, Option Command T, I can make it bigger and it just works. I have a lot of space I can work with, right? So I can make this taller. I can bring my guide down all the way to here if I want to really show the height, and I can give more clouds if I want. And I can even expand the width of it if I want. Right? One limiting factor is the sky. So I'll bring that in a little bit closer. But I kind of like all the stuff going on over here. Whoops. So I might grab most of that. All right, so at this stage, I'm going to hit Command S, because I've kind of placed everything. I can still play with it. Like I'm going to take maybe this rock here and play with trimming it just a little bit more, this time just by using my lasso and cutting a little bit closer to it. Not a fine cut, but just getting rid of some of this blue. And deleting. Whoop, I must be on the wrong layer. Let me make sure I'm on the right layer. There we go. Oh, that's the wrong one. Yep, so layer organization. There we go, that's the right layer. So delete from there. And then this helps me kind of see, where do I want this? How do I want this? And these foreground rocks, maybe I want to stretch those a little bit further. Yeah. And then we kind of play with these placements. I think that works. Yeah. Okay. So now I know kind of the reference images that I'm basing it on. Doesn't mean I can't add more reference later. But now I definitely have 3 layers of depth: foreground, middle ground, there's these little cities in the middle ground, background, city up on the mountain there. And I know I don't need all of this empty space anymore. So now I'm going to use the crop tool, and I'm not going to crop to the final edge. I'm just going to crop closer to my reference, like this. And my guide will still be there to show me where my original edges were, and maybe I want to move those a little bit, which I can do with the move tool. And what's nice is once I turn off my guiding sketch, that's the onion skin on top, you can see how all of this is going to work. It's just, it all needs to be cut out cleanly and then colored and lit to match. And little things might not be matching yet. Like there's that gap in the sky. So what I can do to fix that is I can select both the little Olympus building there and the layer behind it and hit Command or Option Command T and grow them both together. So that it all overlaps, right? Maybe even raise them up a little bit. All right, so I'm going to save my progress there. That's where we want to get by the end of today. Now I'm going to show you how to do clean cuts, and I'm going to show you how to control lighting and color. And these are going to be all new techniques. So what I would like all of you to do is save your work wherever you are right now. Hit Command S, whether you're in Photopea, if you're using Photoshop. Command S will update. And I want you to pick your layer that is the furthest back. So mine is this one. Okay, now, if that layer is a smart object, you will see it with the little square. You're going to right-click on it, and you're going to rasterize it. That will allow you to change the lighting and the color without doing something called a layer adjustment, which is something we don't want to deal with. Okay, now, yeah, your background, right? The one that's right on top of your sketch. So mine is this sky and these clouds. And Mount Everest, I believe. Yes. Okay. Now I have that layer selected. I've saved everything else. I'm going to teach you a new technique. This new technique is called direct image adjustment. If you go to image adjustment, the first one we're going to play with is lights and darks. It is levels. We're going to learn 3 of these. Throughout the semester, we're going to use these 3. Levels is the first. We used levels when we tried to clean up our line art for exercise 1. Here's our histogram. Look how it looks like a mountain range. It's no longer what it looked like when it was just black and white, right? Because white pixels are here, black pixels are here. My background sky with clouds has all this stuff in the middle. The one that's safe to play with, to adjust, is this mid-tone slider. This gray square in the middle of the histogram. And you can decide, do I want this to be darker in the midtones, or do I want it to be brighter? Now, if you go too far, like more than 20%, you'll start losing pixel definition in either direction, right? So basically, it starts at 1, and you can decide, okay, I want it to be a little bit darker and more dramatic. And I think for mine, I do. I want it to be a little bit darker and more dramatic. So I'm going to push it to there. And then you say, okay. And then you can use your history to see if you liked what that did before you did levels. Mine's very subtle. It goes from there to there. But if I wanted it to be a lot brighter, I would go Image, Adjustments, Levels, and push that mid-tone slider towards the left side. And maybe that's better, right? And then say okay, and then I can see what that did. From there to there. All right, next is color adjustment. The first is my favorite. This is amazing. This is called color grading. It changed the game on all visual media after like 1994. It was first used in the feature film Schindler's List, color grading. So